Hello! Today's stories come from r/entitled people. We've got 4 stories, mostly entitled parents, with a sprinkle of entitled people. First up, my son's finger boo boo is more important than that man's heart attack. It was another wondrous day in the emergency room, people running wild trying to keep up, frantic health employees talking over each other. The emergency room is a mixture of very severe patients in real risk of dying, patients who really don't have an emergency but like coming here for who knows what reason, and everything in between. We had a 23-year-old male who dislocated his index finger, distal phalange, in a sporting competition. He came in accompanied by his dad, the main antagonist in our story. We attended the son, and since we are an expensive private hospital, we called the orthopedist to come and fix his finger. Meanwhile, the lad was given ketorolac to help with the pain while he waited a few minutes for his specialist to arrive. As if on cue, in comes a man with chest pain. In the emergency department, we have to treat every chest pain as guilty of being a heart attack until proven innocent. So we begin investigations. We had finished taking a brief history and were setting up the electrodes to take the EKG when entitled dad walks up to us and says, "Hey, my son is in a lot of pain. You cannot just ignore him like this." So I say, "Sir, your son was given medication to aid with the pain, and we cannot do more for him. The specialist is on his way to get that finger fixed." Entitled dad says, "I know that, but you must do something. You cannot just leave him like that." The chief of the ER then chimes in, "Sir, we have a more urgent case here. Your son is perfectly fine, and nobody but the orthopedist can fix his finger as per hospital rules. That is, of course, unless you would be happy a non specialist plops that finger back into place and you accept the risk attention by a non specialist carries." Entitled dad replies, "Well, no, but..." Chief then says, "Wonderful. Now please give us space. We're trying to work here." Entitled dad huffed and puffed his way back to the ortho procedures room his son was in. You might think walking into a room of 3 doctors, setting up an EKG machine on a patient with an "I'm in pain" face would give the man a clue that priorities are priorities, but no. His son was way too precious to have a finger boo boo sidelined for a man with chest pain. In case you were wondering, it all had a happy ending. The man with chest pain did not have a heart attack, and the 23-year-old got his finger fixed and will be competition ready in no time. Oh my gosh, the entitlement over complaining about having to wait for a dislocated finger while at an emergency room? Never mind interrupting the treatment of people with life-threatening emergencies. Yikes. This is another great story from Defunct Mouse, who often writes many fun stories from the hospital on the way to getting a medical degree. And now for 2 of the best comments before moving on to the next story. Blueweem13 said, "Huh, people don't get it. If you're taken back right away, that means you might actually be dying. I've sat in the ER waiting room with no meds with a broken wrist for 3 hours. Took my husband once when he cut off his fingertip, another 2.5-hour wait. Not pleasant, but that's what I expect in the ER. Took him once to urgent care for tachycardia, and that's when you get taken back within 10 minutes. OP replied, "Exactly. You have no idea how common it is for us to hear, 'I have had the same symptoms for 2 weeks, not improving nor getting worse, but I got anxious about them.'" 2:30 a.m. D. Patterso said, "My brother's girlfriend was in a bad accident once. Her arm had a spiral fracture all the way down, extremely painful and high risk for complications. Of course, they were treating this relatively urgently, until a doctor popped in and said, 'Sorry, we had to push back your surgery to tomorrow morning.' So they asked why. A guy came in with an axe lodged in his skull. So yeah, you may think you have it rough, but someone always has it worse." Our second story is, "Woman demands the insurance company I work for pay for her car even though my driver was not at fault." So, I work as a claims adjuster for an auto insurance company, and it never shocks to amaze me just how entitled some people can get. I have a woman whose daughter was involved in an accident with one of my clients. Her daughter made a left turn after failing to yield to my driver, and the police report also states the daughter was at fault for failing to yield. My driver states she braked and swerved to try to avoid and was traveling on a 45-mile-per-hour road, so no evidence to support speed. The other driver's insurance has already accepted that their driver is at fault and paid my driver for her damages. The other driver was not very cooperative. She refused to return calls to me or my customer, and this week, about 6 weeks after the accident, She calls up and starts making my life miserable. She called me 3 times over the weekend. My voicemail clearly states I only work weekdays, and was pissed that I didn't call her back sooner and demanded to know when someone would be going out to inspect her car and pay for her damages. I called back and left a voicemail advising that based on the police report and my driver's statement, her daughter was at fault, so we would not be paying her for her damages. She called and spoke with my regional manager, my boss's boss, saying how rude I had been because I would not inspect her car. My regional manager just forwarded the voicemail to me and my boss and asked me to call her back. I did. We spoke directly, and she insisted that her insurance never said she was at fault. I asked if they advised her that they were paying my driver, and she said yes, but that they had never said she was at fault. She got upset and hung up the phone. She called me back this morning and once again demanded to know when we're going to send someone out to pay her for her damages. She even said, "I don't want to hear anything out of your mouth other than what I can do to get my car fixed. Tell me right now how to get someone from your company to inspect my car." I tried to explain to her that we wouldn't be inspecting since we were not paying out. She just kept talking over me and insisting that we were going to pay for her damages because her daughter was not at fault. I tried to explain why my driver had the right of way, and she just kept talking over me and finally told me, "I am going to call your regional manager and have you fired." I sent her the denial in writing and called it a day. Update. I was able to speak directly to the liability adjuster at her company. He advised me he spoke to her a couple of days ago and that he did explain to her that her daughter was at fault for the accident, but she didn't want to hear it either. Since then, she has left me and my managers alone. Let's skip the commentary and get right to some hilarious comments and some extra details from OP. ChuckleNuggets1980 said, "What an absolute Muppet." In reply, MB said, "Muppets have a hand up their arse. This woman has her whole head up there." Pfeiffer Curator asked, "If you repeat your version of reality adamantly, then reality will bend to your will?" OP replied, "The sad thing is, she wasn't disputing what was in the police report. She never said she didn't agree with it. She just kept demanding that we pay for her car." My existential crisis said, "She probably spent the 6 weeks following the accident harassing someone at her insurance company before making demands of you and yours. I'm guessing she only carried liability coverage or didn't want to pay the deductible." OP replied, "She only has liability." Dizzy Vegetablex had this to add, "I worked in auto claims, and this level of stupid entitlement is sadly all too common. One of my favorites was a woman who backed into a car in the parking lot at her apartment. Her reason as to why it was his fault? It was a gated complex and he wasn't a resident, therefore his car shouldn't have been there. Unfortunately, I have many similar stories." And now for our final story, a two-parter with an update. We're having a 6th kid we can't afford, so we expect you to give us your college fund. I am a 19-year-old female and my parents' second child. I have 3 brothers, 21, 13, and 7, and a sister who's 16. We grew up poor, and our parents were often dependent on financial help from relatives, friends, etc. for raising us. This is because even though my dad has a mediocre job and my mom doesn't work, they just kept on popping out one kid after another. My parents are very religious and believe that children are a gift. Personally, I think that's total BS. My parents' reproductive choices wouldn't bother me if it hadn't caused mine and my siblings' lives to turn to trash. While growing up, we never had new clothes or toys. We had to accept handouts from family members who were better off. We never went out or did anything fun. To top it off, we were all well aware that the rest of the family looked down on us for constantly asking for handouts. Now, my older brother and I have managed to get into good colleges and are looking forward to a future that would be better than our parents' lives. He and I were staying at our parents' place for a while due to vid lockdown. One morning, my parents called all 5 of us into the living room. Mom said she had great news. The smile that was forming on my face died a quick death when she said, "We're pregnant." I lost my temper. I asked them how they could be so stupid and irresponsible. Do they not have enough financial troubles already that they have to bring in another mouth to feed? My older brother tried to calm me down, but I was livid. After a lifetime of scarcity because of my parents' stupidity, they still hadn't learned their lesson. I asked them how they planned to provide for the kid. My dad told me I would have to give up the money our great-uncle had left me. He had left all 5 of us some money which only we could access when we turned 18. I said heck no. That money would help pay for my college expenses. He called me selfish for not being there for family. I told them if they couldn't provide for the kid, they should get an abortion. My mom started crying and called me a heartless monster. Dad told me he was disgusted with me. I told him there was no way I was going to pay for their stupidity, and the only thing I would be willing to pay for is a termination. What I was really worried about was my siblings' lives getting even worse. My older brother and I have escaped our parents' clutches, but the others, especially my younger sister, will be expected to help take care of this baby. No teenager deserves to have their adolescence ruined by diapers and a screaming baby. I know what it's like, as I had to go through that. It was expected of me to be an unpaid nanny to my younger brothers and sister. My older brother could go out with his friends and have fun, but I had to stay home and help give baths and feed the toddlers. I decided to get some family members involved so they could talk some sense into my parents. I called my mom's maternal cousin. She's one of my favorite people. When I told her that mom and dad were having another kid, she reacted with, "What? Again?" I told her everything and how they expected me to hand over my inheritance. She said she was going to speak to my parents and told me not to sign over anything. I promised her I wouldn't. Of course I won't. I also called two of my first cousins, one of whom is an accountant, so she could explain to my parents how much of a financial liability this baby is going to be, and try to convince them to either abort or give it up for adoption. I moved out of my parents' home a few days ago. I was only going to stay there till the lockdown was relaxed. But I just can't bear to listen to my mom's nagging about how this baby is a blessing and that I want to kill it. I've moved into a friend's basement for a minimal rent. My mom's cousin paid them a visit about a week ago and tried to tell them they weren't doing this child any favors by bringing it into a life of poverty. My mom was very rude to my aunt and told her that a woman who chose to remain barren will never understand a mother's love. My aunt never wanted kids nor had any, one of the reasons she's my fave. My dad told her to get out. Aunt told me there was nothing she could do, but she did try. I didn't blame her. The cousin tried to explain the economic impact this kid would have, and my mom cried about how everyone was trying to take away her baby. What the F? The intervention didn't do anything, so now I've decided to cut contact with my parents. I just can't watch my family slide further and further into a black hole. I'll be maintaining contact with my sister, 16, just to make sure my parents can't brainwash her. My older brother is going to stay in touch with all of them, which is a good thing, as he can act as a link between me and the other siblings if my parents ever forbid them from talking to me. Otherwise, I'm done with these people. Relevant comments. My parents can't touch the money. Only my siblings can withdraw it when they turn 18. My sister will be 18 in a year and a half, and I've explained to her that she's going to need it for college. Hopefully, I was able to convince her. My brother will be staying there till the lockdown is lifted. I'm glad he's there actually, as he can be my eyes and ears for what's going on over there. His inheritance has already been spent on his college expenses. Oh, wow. When I first saw the title, I was expecting that the parents rescinded the offer to pay for college due to a new child. But oh, it's so much worse. Let's read the extra details the OP gave in the comments and then get on to the update. Luck of Tadrat said, "I applaud you. You don't owe them your college fund. They made their bed, they can lay in it. You might want to discuss with your siblings about it signing anything over to their parents if uncle left you all some money." OP replied, "My parents can't touch the money. Only my siblings can withdraw it when they turn 18. My sister will be 18 in a year and a half, and I've explained to her that she's going to need it for college. Hopefully, I was able to convince her." UNT said, "Can't you take your sister away too?" OP replied, "I honestly wish I could, but I can't. The money I've inherited will only be enough to pay my tuition till my sophomore year. I'm working part-time jobs to accumulate money to pay for the rest. I can't support my sister too. Besides, she's a minor and I can't take her away without my parents' consent." And now to wrap it up with the update, our last story. Yesterday afternoon, I got a call from my older brother. He told me that my mom has miscarried. This is hardly surprising, as she's in her 40s. I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me. My siblings' lives would not be worsened by my parents' insistence on adding another mouth to feed on an already tight budget. My sister would not be asked to give up her inheritance so they could have money for their new baby. My brother told me my mom had been crying, and while I did feel bad for her, I was still glad to hear about the miscarriage. I feel like we all dodged a huge bullet. Bro asked me to move back in for a while to help comfort my mom. I told him I wasn't going to move in because one, my college would reopen in a few days, and two, I'm done with all the family drama. However, I did agree to come visit my mom, if only out of courtesy. In the evening, I went over to my parents' place. I took chocolate chip muffins for my mom, which I know she likes. My sister greeted me at the door and told me mom had been in bed all day. After greeting my dad, I went into their bedroom. Mom was sitting up on the bed. I told her I was sorry about what happened and placed the muffins on the bedside table. She looked at me angrily, then threw the muffins at me. She screamed at me that she had lost her baby because of me. She said I had caused her stress and it's what caused her to miscarry. She said I was probably glad her baby was dead, which is true, but of course I didn't point that out. She called me a witch and said I had wished this upon her. She was screaming so loudly, all my siblings and my dad came rushing to the bedroom. She yelled at me to get out. I did. I hugged my older brother and sister. Before I left, my dad told me my mom was right, that my cruelty caused her to miscarry. I told him that was a grossly unfair accusation and reminded him that at my mom's age, it was quite common to miscarry. Then I walked out. I'm so done with my parents and their stupidity. I can only hope they won't try for another kid. Okay, so I will give a pass for the mom on the update. Right or wrong, it's gotta be a really hard emotional time for her. And OP also deserves a lot of respect for continuing to try and extend the olive branch to the mom, because there's a 1,000% chance they're gonna try and get pregnant again. Let's read a few comments before wrapping up. There was some good comedy in there. Matraxa said, "Of course they will try for another one, then demand your money as compensation for your having killed the last one. That is a BS argument, and you should be ready for it. They've shown you who they are now, and there's no reason not to believe them. Most especially, don't let them know anything about your finances, lest they use that information to calculate the demand that will cause you the most pain if you comply." Ashiati said, "Now you just have to use your witchcraft to make her go through menopause." Garnets and Pearls replied, "Deep into menopause. I have a 14+ year age gap with my elder siblings because my folks thought they were in the clear." Eckergill said, "Wow, you handled yourself incredibly well. I felt myself getting upset just reading that bit about you and your mom in her bedroom. I probably would have lost it. I can't believe how ignorant your parents are. No 19-year-old should ever be guilt-tripped and manipulated like that. Good on you for at least making an effort to visit, but they really don't deserve you in their life." OP replied, "I've had a lifetime of experience in dealing with my mom's tantrums." Angsty Canadian Gleek said, "Right. My willpower caused you to have a miscarriage." Yes, let's ignore many years of scientific research that states the likelihood of miscarriage after a certain age and go straight for blaming your kid because that is no doubt what the doctor said. Gotta love the way toxic parents find to blame things on the kids. OP replied, "I'm going to use my witch powers to fix North Korea now." If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.